Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. Guys, make sure to smash the like button on this video. Let's get those likes up. I'm hoping that you guys are liking my thumbnails and you're smashing the like button even more because of the thumbnails, because I am trying to be creative with those thumbnails. You know, give me your feedback on what you think about my new thumbnails and whether you like them, whether you find them funny or yeah, I'm trying to play around a little bit, so you might see the next few thumbnails me having a bit of fun. But yeah, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, share the videos, all that good stuff. Guys, I want to talk about Bob Arum. Bob Arum still wants to make Canelo v Beterbiev. He said, well, Beterbiev and Smith would be a challenge, and this really irritated me, and I'll tell you why. He's still talking about making Beterbiev and Canelo. And by the way, for me, that would be a very difficult fight for Canelo. I think Beterbiev would knock Canelo out. He'd be too strong. He'd knock him out, in my opinion. I think we've seen that Canelo's not suited at 175, even though I think he would have stylistically a better chance against Beterbiev. But I think if Canelo can't hurt Beterbiev, if he can't hurt him, then Beterbiev is gonna really put Canelo through a lot of pain in that fight, and I think Canelo would get stopped. I think Beterbiev's style's all wrong. Canelo has trouble with those type of styles. A guy that's strong, that can punch, that can push him on the back foot. Canelo's stamina's not, and Canelo would get knocked out. He wouldn't be able to avoid Beterbiev unless he lands something that he's able to knock Beterbiev out, which wouldn't be easy. Beterbiev would put him under so much pressure. It literally almost brutalized Canelo in that fight, I would say, because Bivol was so physically strong for Canelo. You could tell Beterbiev's stronger than Bivol. Beterbiev's way stronger, so that's a no-go. But what I want to talk about is the fact that Bob Arum is still adamant in making the Canelo-Beterbiev fight because he knows that fight makes him a lot of money, whereas, you know, he's not. I saw an interview a month ago, and he's not really keen on making the Bivol fight. He doesn't want to make the Bivol fight. Basically, said, well, Bivol fights on DAZN, and you know, why doesn't Bivol go and fight Gilberto Ramirez? And that's the fight I think he should do. And but he's talking about Canelo, who also fights on DAZN, but he's basically saying that I think Canelo would be a challenge for Beterbiev. So how does that make sense, guys? He's willing to make the Beterbiev and Canelo fight, but yet he's not willing to make the Bivol fight because he's saying Bivol is fighting on DAZN. That is not good. Not good. Like, for the sport, when you have promoters like Bob Arum coming out and saying that, it's just not good, because clearly shows he doesn't want to make the Bivol fight. He's not even saying, like, and he basically said, this is what he said. He said, well, I don't want my fighters to go and fight on DAZN because they won't get the exposure. And I want my fighters to fight on ESPN, and they also want to fight on ESPN. Okay, so why not maybe send an offer to Bivol to fight on ESPN? What makes you think that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, they've done it in the past, that why wouldn't they allow Dmitry Bivol to go and fight on ESPN? He didn't even mention that. He didn't even mention the fact that if Dmitry Bivol comes and fights on ESPN, we'd be willing to make that fight. He just made an excuse that, oh, well, they're fighting, he fights on DAZN and he fights on ESPN. That's not good for the sport of boxing, guys. I'll be brutally honest with you. That's really bad for the sport of boxing, because you're basically not making the fights the fans want to see. I spoke to a lot of fans that actually feel that fight is up there with Spence and Crawford as one of the best fights in boxing that can be made. You know, you definitely say it's not as big commercially or maybe as a Spencer Crawford, Joshua Fury, but it's up there as a hardcore boxing fan. That's a fight that we would all want to see. And then you have a promoter coming out and completely dismissing it and saying, well, he fights on DAZN, but then he's willing to make a Canelo fight and saying, well, Beterbiev would be a challenge to Beterbiev and Smith would be a challenge to Canelo. Why are you mentioning Canelo's name when Canelo got beat? Canelo just got beat. Why are you mentioning Canelo's name in the light heavyweight division? He just got beat by the champion, and Canelo was never the champion. So why are you mentioning Canelo's name and not mentioning the guy that beat Canelo. It clearly shows that these promoters are just after the dough. That's what it shows, because it don't make any sense. It don't make any sense. You don't, like, it clearly shows that they don't want to fight Dimitri Bivol. That's what it shows. And it's very disappointing as a fan to hear that, because I really want to see that fight between Bivol and Beterbiev. And not just me, I think I'm speaking for majority of the boxing fans around the world that want to see that fight. You know, it's a mutual agreement from the fans that we want to see Dimitri Bivol, Beterbiev. After the Canelo fight happened with Dimitri Bivol, every fan was saying we want to see Beterbiev v Bivol. That's the fight the fans want to see. And then you've got a promoter of Artur Beterbiev saying, well, he fights on DAZN, when he knows that how many fights has Bob Arum made. Bob Arum sent Ramirez to fight Hooker on DAZN, if I'm not mistaken. And not just that, why not send an offer? Why not send an offer to Dimitri Bivol to fight on ESPN? At most, they'll turn it down. At least do your part. But instead, there's no reluctance. So at this point, you'd have to say Bob Arum doesn't want to make that fight for whatever reason. Is it the fact that he thinks Beterbiev could get beat? I don't know, but it's a clear sign that he's willing to make the Canelo fight, even though Canelo lost to Beterbiev, lost to Bivol, but he's not willing to make the Bivol fight. You know, in terms of the Canelo fight, like I said, breaking it down, I think Beterbiev is all wrong for Canelo. Unless Canelo can land something big, I think Canelo would get stopped in that fight. I think Artur Beterbiev would stop Canelo. And I've changed my opinion on it, because I saw the fight against Bivol, and the size difference, the strength, and like, yeah, it's too much. It's too much for me. I think that would be a step too far, as the Bivol fight was. I think the only champion that Canelo would beat right now is Joe Smith. I think Canelo would beat Joe Smith, but in terms of Bivol and Beterbiev, those top two guys, I'm not sure Canelo can beat him at 175. I think that's been proven now in that fight against Bivol. I think it's going to be nigh on impossible for him to match those guys. Those guys are too big, too strong. They're also very skilled fighters. So Canelo's not just fighting guys that are way bigger. He's fighting guys that are also very skilled as well. So yeah, for me personally, I can't see Canelo winning those fights. And maybe that's why, because Bob Arum looks at it and thinks, well, if he fights Beterbiev, that's a big fight, that's a big money fight, and we'll make a lot of money from that. Whereas a Bivol fight, he probably doesn't look at it as financially appealing, even though I think it would be. I think it would be financially appealing. I think the Bivol fight would be a big fight. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't the Bivol fight be a big fight with Beterbiev? It's an undisputed fight. It's a fight that a lot of the hardcore fans want to see, you know. It's a much bigger fight than Beterbiev Joe Smith. So I don't understand. I don't understand why Bob Arum is so reluctant to make that fight. Personally, I think it's a great fight. I think it's a fight that I want to see. Don't get me wrong. If they make Canelo Beterbiev, I'd watch that. I'd also like that fight as well. Don't get me wrong. But the fact is, Canelo's got business to deal with. Now he's talking about he's talking about Canelo. Right, but and then he said, well, Bivol should fight Gilberto Ramirez. This is what he said. And don't get me wrong, this wasn't all in one interview. These are separate interviews. This was a couple of weeks back. Then he said another interview today, but a day ago. The point I'm trying to make is this is what's coming out. Like there's no real focus on making that fight. There's no real like. There should be a priority from Bob Arum to make that fight next. That's the biggest fight that can be made in the light heavyweight division. You know, Canelo might go back down to 168. You know, and that means we're not going to get an undisputed fight between Bivol and Beterbiev, because it seems like the head man, the chief, doesn't want to make it. He feels well. He's just said that he fights on DAZN, and you know, we don't want our fighters to fight on DAZN. But make an offer for him to fight. He didn't even, this is what I mean. At least if he had said, well, we're going to make an offer to Bivol, right, for a fight on ESPN. But instead, he just said, well, Bivol should go and fight Gilberto Ramirez. Ridiculous. To me, that promoter saying that is not good for boxing. It's not good for boxing because us fans are not going to get the fight we want to see. It's a joke. A promoter saying that, you know, well, he fights on DAZN and I don't want my fighters to fight on DAZN because they don't get exposure fighting on DAZN. You know, I want my fighters, and my fighters want to fight on ESPN. So what are you saying? Beterbiev doesn't want to fight an undisputed fight? Is that what we're saying? And I don't think that's the case. So, you know, it's just very poor to hear that, you know. But in terms of if they try, I think Canelo should stay away from Beterbiev. I think it's a horrible fight. I think it's a fight which is all wrong for him. I can see why Bob Arum wants to make that fight because of money purposes. But yeah, I don't think that's a good fight for Canelo. I think Beterbiev would stop Canelo, in my opinion. But yeah, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, I've had, I think it was Daniel Chambers that wanted me to do a breakdown of Danny Garcia and Jose Benavidez. You know, Benavidez's brother who fights at 147, 154. That's a good fight, you know. That's a good fight because Benavidez gave Terence Crawford some issues. You know, I don't know how his leg is because we know he was fighting on with one leg against Terence Crawford. I don't know whether his leg is, you know, I believe he's been shot on that. So that's probably never going to be healed to the point. But I think it's a very good fight. I think Benavidez could potentially outbox Garcia. But look, I do expect Garcia to maybe land something and hurt him and get him out of there because Crawford did knock him out. And Garcia's a big puncher as well. Can Garcia knock Benavidez? I think he can. I think Garcia's a really good fighter. You know, he's a proven fighter. You know, if you look at his resume, it's a great resume. Look, I've never been, I think Garcia's best win was against Amir Khan back all those years ago. Then he fought Lucas Matisse. I think those were his two best wins. After that, you know, his performances against Lamont Peterson, Herrera were a bit questionable. His performances against, obviously against, he got beat by Thurman, got beat by Porter, got beat by Spence. Yeah, so Garcia, he's had kind of up and down performances. You know, the Khan performance was very good, although he was getting outboxed. The Lamont Peterson, the Matisse one was very good, although that was close. I felt he won that. But then, you know, he's had some controversial ones like the Herrera, like the Petersons. But he is a good fighter. He is a good fighter, and he has taken on all comers. And this is another tough fight. This isn't an easy fight. And if he, you know, he's just adding another name to his resume and his legacy. You know, he's a guy that Danny Garcia is not afraid to fight anybody. I won't be surprised if he goes for a Jermell Charlo. You know, Garcia's right when Garcia says, I know there was talk about Lara, but I don't know why he needs to fight Lara. I would go for Jermell Charlo. The reason why I think even someone like Jermell Charlo might be interested in Danny Garcia is because Danny Garcia is a big name. Danny Garcia does numbers. Danny Garcia would be the biggest payday for Jermell Charlo in around those weight classes because Danny Garcia has a pretty big name. So if I was Jermell Charlo, I would target that fight. And also, that's an interesting fight because Garcia can crack, although he's never fought at 154 and he is really a natural 140. I actually think that would be a good fight because, you know, Charlo comes forward. Charlo might just be too big, too strong for Garcia. But Garcia's got a very good chin. He's never seen him knocked down before, never knocked out. So that would be a good fight. You know, I'd favor Charlo in that one, but that might be a better fight than what people give it credit for. I think Garcia's always bringing the heat. You know, he's a good fighter. I think that would be a good fight, one that I would definitely be keen in watching. So yeah, I think that's a very good fight. In terms of the fight, I favor Garcia. I wouldn't be surprised of an upset because Benavidez is a good boxer. So it wouldn't surprise me if Benavidez outboxes him because Garcia can be outboxed. He's pretty flat-footed. If you box and move, you can outbox him. But he's clever. He sets traps and he's a good counter-puncher. You know, that left hook is venomous. You know, if that hits you, you know, it could be lights out. So, yeah, man, that's a good fight. That's a very good fight. I'm interested in seeing how that one plays out. But I would favor Garcia just because Benavidez has had his issues. He's got issues with his knee. You know, he's been shot in his knee. So, yeah, I don't know whether his leg, he didn't look good against Crawford. He performed well against Crawford, but his leg seemed like it was an issue. And, yeah, let's see how he gets on with Garcia. Garcia is not as skilled as Crawford, but Garcia can really punch. And, you know, Crawford did stop Benavidez in the end. Will Garcia do the same? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. And, you know, who knows? If Garcia puts on an impressive win, he's back in the mix. He's back in the mix for a big fight, and maybe a Jamel Charlo fight at 154 might be something that interests him. But yeah, leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.